Hello, I'm Symphony Morrow. Right now, we have a basic beehive braids ready for a full installment sewing. A couple things you want to know before installing your sewing. Okay, with these beehive braids, you see they're medium size. With the medium size braids, you are able to achieve a flat look. You don't want to have that hump in your head. And you see where the braids are ended at in this circle? You don't want to have braids that end here, because most of the time this is where your hair falls naturally, and it will cause you to have that hump in your head. When you have it back here, your hair is falling off of your scalp, so you can't really notice or feel this when you have your tracks in. Now, a couple of things I want to let you ladies know, and men, about the installments on the sew-in. First thing you want to know that, the size of a person's head can determine how much hair you will have to use on your hair. For the average woman, they like to use about 3 bundles on their hair, to have it nice, full, and flowing. With these type of braids right here, they're fairly close together. You can fit about 2 bundles on here. If your braids were further apart, you would not be able to apply as much hair because of the simple fact that you won't have anywhere to lay the tracks. The more braids, the tighter they are, the flatter they are, the better the outcome will be for your sew-in. And the reason why is because when you have someone rub across your head, you don't want them to know that you have those braids. You don't really want them to know that these are extensions in your hair. So when you have them braided kind of closely like they are now, it lets that person, when they feel your hair, feels more natural. Now, as far as your braiding, a lot of women have weak edges, and if you continue to have sew-in after sew-in without letting your hair breathe, your edges will break off, because it's a lot of stress and a lot of tension on your edges, which causes it to be weak. And then when you're doing something like brushing your hair weave, you're pulling on those braids and you're pulling on those edges, and it's causing more stress and more tension on those edges. So if you take a look at the braids here, I started off right here on the edge, fairly small. But that next braid that basically runs along the hairline, you can see that it's fairly bigger than the rest of the braids. The reason why is because you don't want to make that braid so small that stress and tension is pulling on that little piece of hair. Most of the time when you take down your sew-in, that hair will come out, and it causes you to have like bald spots around those edges, which is something that a lot of people have problems with. You do want to make that outside braid just a little bit thicker than the rest of those braids, because here you see you have more room where you can add at least 3 or 4 tracks on just this one braid along the edge, which makes your part, if you're going to have one, look a little bit more natural when it's falling, versus you having so small braids along your edges that when you take your hair down, it'll have that stress and tension and you will have weak edges. We don't want to have that. Now, we were talking about the amount of hair that you're using. Nowadays, we really work in weight. 4 ounces, 8 ounces, 12 ounces when we're out buying hair. Like I stated a little earlier, the average woman uses about 3 bundles to have a full, natural flowing hair, especially when we're speaking of something like the 22-inch hair that everyone is wearing more so nowadays. So, with those type of hairs, when you're getting those bundles of Brazilian, Peruvian, Bohemian, whatever the hair texture may be, you want to make sure that you have your braids done very nice and neatly for that installment. Now, these parts, they're fairly good, but the parts don't matter. That isn't a major part of the sew-in that's going to matter. You want to make sure those braids are tight to the point that when you pull a track, your braid isn't coming down, but you also want to make sure that you don't have as much stress or tension on your edges. And it will help determine how much hair you're going to use. Braids this size, normally about 2 packs. But go ahead and fill up the whole head for a full installment. If you had your braids smaller, really close together, if you wanted to use up to 4 packs of hair or 4 bundles of hair, you will be able to do that because you'll have more room to go ahead and add those tracks. Remember, when you are laying your tracks, the wefts across, how you place your tracks will determine the natural fall of the hair. So if you place all your tracks going in a vertical movement, going back and forth basically, up and down for vertical, then all of your tracks are going to kind of lay to the side. Not going to have a lot of flowy movement. Versus if you're doing horizontal, going across each braid. Right now, fitting about 2 tracks on each braid. Got to take up about 2 bundles of hair. 2 tracks along each braid. I'll have you a full head of a sew-in. A lot of women like to go crazy. A lot of people spend a lot of unnecessary money on getting extra bundles that's not needed. You know, a lot of times this hair out here, you can't use it over and over again. So you do want to make sure that you get a good deal, and do want to make sure that you're spending your money wisely. Have someone that knows how to do those braids, that first step, correctly for your Peruvian, your Bohemian, or your Brazilian hair to look good on you, you know? So basically, just to go over the little tips that I've given you today about your sew-in, you want to make sure your braids are medium to small, you know, so that you won't have to use as much hair, maybe 2 to 3 bundles to get you a full sew-in. You want to make sure that this first braid that goes around the hairline is bigger than the rest. You don't want all that stress and tension on your edges, because a lot of times there are a couple of tracks that are laying on those braids. Another tip that I want to give you, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you end your circle off in your beehive, you want to make sure that it's more so here, not at the crown of your head, because you're going to have that big bulge, that lump. You want to have it where it's a little bit closer to your occipital bone, because it could have a natural fall and just flow off of your scalp. You know, if you hold your head down, you know, that hair just flows straight up. Versus if you hold your head down and it flows straight up from here, that'll look kind of weird. So, want to make sure you have those braids fairly closely together. Nice size, not so tiny on the edges to reduce stress and tension. Don't end the circle on the top, but have it more so in the middle. And make sure that your braids are nice and tight so that your tracks will not fall out if you just brush them. Thank you so much for watching my video. You can check out more videos at our website, www.hairtakeover.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram at SinCity10. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you guys watching more of our videos.